Thanks. Wow, what a crowd. This is quite a pleasure for me to get to speak to so many people all at once. Sorry, I'm still a little bitter and coming off of having the red dot personally, so if I'm a little down. I also noticed she pointed out the emergency exits right before my talk. I don't think there's anything that particularly volatile in here. Anyway, again, thanks to Qt for hosting me. My name's Rick Spencer, and I am the Director of Engineering for Ubuntu, which means I work for Canonical. Canonical is the corporate backer of the Ubuntu project, and essentially it means my job is to do whatever is necessary to help all the about 80 people who work for Canonical and the hundreds of other developers in the community who make Ubuntu happen. I just have to do whatever it takes to help them ship it every 6 months. Thought I'd just mention a little bit of my history with Ubuntu, because as you guys are going through this transition into open governance, I think I have a interesting perspective on it, because I've really been on both extreme ends of the open governance notion. So I started my career in software, in proprietary software, like deep in proprietary software. And then in the 90s, I discovered the open source desktops. And I was using Fedora and OpenSUSE, and I started thinking, this is really a better way to make software. This is better software. And as a developer, this is just a lot more fun. I'm a contributor. I'm not just a user. There's something about being in that participation that just made me want to base my career on the open source desktop. Well, it wasn't as easy to extricate myself from the proprietary world as I thought it would be. It took me a few years. But indeed, lo and behold, after a few years, I've transitioned myself into totally open software. And I really don't see myself going back. I think I would change careers before I went and worked for proprietary closed software companies again. So some of you might be wondering what Ubuntu is. Ubuntu is a community open source distro. And I'm hitting the word community here because Canonical cannot ship Ubuntu by itself. The community of developers who participate, not just in the governance, but also in the building of the product, are absolutely necessary to make Ubuntu ship. There's two big parts of Ubuntu. There's a server part, and right now the Ubuntu server is just nailing the innovation in the cloud space. So Cloud Host, Cloud Guest, there's projects like Juju and Orchestra that are coming out of those teams that are just changing everything. But I think this crowd's probably a bit more interested in the desktop side. And I think that our desktop might be the most popular open desktop. It's very hard to say because typically open source desktops don't make you register, they don't phone home, so it can be difficult to estimate. But I think we're probably the most popular. And one of the things that Ubuntu is known for is changing the perspective about who the open desktop is for. So in my experience, the developers making the open desktops were making open source desktops that they wanted to use. The back early 90s, mid 90s, right? So it was building it for themselves, which is great. That's really strong. There's still a lot of desktops that are developers building them for themselves, other developers. And I applaud that. But Ubuntu sort of changed their mission, and they made the mission to build an open source desktop to end users, people who aren't already in the open source world, and to bring them into open source. Ubuntu is also known for pushing the envelope in user experience. There's a project called Unity that's been really controversial and just really pushing forward really aggressively in user experience in the open source desktop. I'll talk a bit about that. But the server and the desktop for Ubuntu, they're both free as in beer, which means they cost nothing to install. And they're both free as in speech, which means you can see all the source code, you can modify the source code, you can share it. you can pass it on, all the stuff that you would expect. But you can also participate. So you can become part of the Ubuntu community and put your effort back into making Ubuntu what you think it should be. Okay, so then also by way of introduction, I have 2 parts of my talk remaining. The first is I'm just going to talk a little bit about Qt, QML, and Ubuntu today, how we've been using it, some things I thought you might be interesting. The second part, I'm going to talk a bit about open governance, my experience, our experience in Ubuntu, and how I think it relates to the transition that I think you folks are going to be going through as Qt becomes an open governance project. So, okay. So what you see here, I thought I'd get this out of the way. What you see here is a screenshot of Unity, what we call Unity 2D. Unity is the name of the shell. That's the default shell in Ubuntu, where you access your programs and your files and everything. It's the desktop shell. This is it running on my netbook. We love Unity 2D because it's really, really excellent for users who don't have excellent hardware acceleration. Like typically you get a desktop and it's got a GPU and it's got drivers for that GPU, and so it's got this awesome graphics throughput. But there's a lot of scenarios, a lot of situations where you don't have that. For instance, maybe you bought an ARM device, and on ARM, the graphics driver situation's not always ideal, so maybe there's not a GPU or it can't use the GPU. Maybe you're running it in a virtual box type environment, you're running it virtualized, and you just don't want to make it use the hardware. Different reasons. So this is now in our last release that we just released. It's called version 11.10. This is now default. It's standard in Ubuntu. So when you log in, you can select Unity 2D. And Unity 2D is built in QML. Florian is a Canonical employee, and he's the architect and developer for this project. And he could have chosen from a lot of different toolkits. There's a lot of widget toolkits that would have fit his needs. But he did a lot of testing, and he found that fundamentally QML had the best performance and the best trade-offs across all the different hardware situations that he thought that they might be running on. Then when he started using it, he a bit fell in love with QML, and now he's a pretty strong advocate of QML in the Ubuntu community. Some of the things that he promotes for is he says he likes writing the user interface declaratively. And he says he's a faster developer this way. He's a developer. He's got a really good design sense, but he's not a designer. But he's found that with QML, he can hand the QML files off to his design team. They can party on it and do whatever they want, and then give it back, and it just fits right into his workflow. So he's not struggling to exchange artifacts with the design team. And the designers were able to understand the QML, and the designers were able to exploit it through their design creativity. He also liked QML because he was able to build pretty quickly his own widget toolkit. So these are all like different reusable components that he ended up building up over time. He found QML was very conducive to that reusability. And finally, he really liked that the QML architecture really sort of enforced very naturally a separation between the GUI logic and the back-end data logic. And this just sort of created a nice MVC architecture for him by default. And so he thinks it's a good technology for that reason. Anyway, this turned out so well, it now ships by default, which is meaningful to you because since this is on the CD by default, that means all the runtime necessary to run Qt and QML is already built into Ubuntu. So if you ship a Qt or QML app onto Ubuntu, your users won't have to download and have all the extra libraries installed. Okay, so that's our 2D shell, but there's also kind of Qt everywhere in Ubuntu. For example, we're finding that a lot of the communication applications that we use within Canonical and also the Ubuntu community are written in Qt. And I think that's probably because there's a lot of benefit to having communication programs be cross-platform. Like just because I'm using Ubuntu and you're using a Mac doesn't mean we don't want to talk to each other. So I think you see things like Skype being a natural choice for Qt. We also use this program called Mumble a lot, which is this crazy sort of voice chat room application. And then there's a lot of just full-blown applications written in Qt that are available on Ubuntu. And so you see here, there's a little screenshot down there of a program called Scribus, which is used for making pamphlets and posters, and really neat program. There's so many programs like that, and there's the KDE desktop that is built in Qt that, in fact, there's a flavor of Ubuntu called Kubuntu, which is Ubuntu with KDE instead of Unity and GNOME. Wow, Kubuntu fans, cool, all right. All right. Maybe we'll see you next week at UDS then, this week. Plan the next version. So, all right. Also, there's a part of Canonical called Online Services that offers services in and around Ubuntu. And one of the things that they offer, their most popular offering, is a personal cloud. And of course, you want your personal cloud available on all your devices. And they recently came out with a Windows client. So if you're stuck at work using Windows, you can still access your personal cloud using the Windows client. And they chose Qt for that. And it looks quite good. It looks very natural in the Windows environment. They enjoyed writing it. They feel it's a very solid application. It's going to stand the test of time. And they also think they have a code base that's going to be reasonably portable as they want to target new platforms. So, okay. But what might be more, at least as interesting to this audience, is not just the way Qt lives in Ubuntu, but Ubuntu as your development environment. So Ubuntu is a very, very popular platform for developers. Does anyone here use Ubuntu as their development environment? Okay, it's fairly significant. I'd say 10%. Sorry, apparently that was funny, but I'm pleased. So. Okay, it's very, very popular for all kinds of developers. Like we see a lot of enterprise developers using it for their pencil ordering web applications and that kind of thing, as well as people using it for Qt. So as you can see, all your familiar Qt tools are built into Ubuntu. They're all available in the repositories. But here I'm going to foreshadow the next part of my talk. The thing about Ubuntu is it's an open project. You can participate in it. So it's not just that your tools are there for you to consume. It's that they live in Ubuntu, so they're there for you to decide how they should be available in Ubuntu, and to really deeply influence that. For instance, what version should the next version of Ubuntu, what version of the tools should come in the next version of Ubuntu by default? Are there functions in a later version that should be backported to that version, and do you want to do that backporting yourself? Are there annoying bugs which you've never been able to get fixed, but now, open source project on an open source platform, you can actually just fix those bugs yourself. So when you choose Ubuntu as your development environment, you get more than you're not just a user, you're a participant, you're a contributor. And so you can have control of the destiny of your development environment. I'd also be remiss, however, if I didn't talk about all all of our developer offerings. We also have a website called Launchpad, and this is tied into our BZR, which is Bizarre, our code collaboration system, and there's great integration between Ubuntu and this website where you can do code hosting, you can get bug reports from users, you can do questions and answer from your users. And you also get something called a personal package archive, which is kind of like your own little repository where you can share with a limited number of users your code, maybe before you're ready to share it with everyone. There's a couple other things that come with using Ubuntu as your development environment. One is it's very easy to integrate with our community, and I think that's for a couple reasons. But one of the main reasons is that we have something called the code of conduct. So we have codified, and this is at the very start of the product, like what behavior, both technical and social, we want to promote in the community. That has resulted in it being a very open community, and it's very easy for people to respond to your questions because there's a code of conduct for responding to it. So it's not the kind of community where you may worry about your reception when you come to that community. So just come and ask questions, try to participate, and I think that you'll find it very enjoyable. Okay, so we have a great development environment, but we also have users. I use this slide of the Software Center to represent our user base. And this is a very direct line to our users. So if you put your software in Ubuntu, they can really easily find it here in the Software Center. They can rate your application. It'll float to the top if it's a good one. They can pay for your application if it's paid. So this is like the user's perspective on it. Your perspective on it would come through part of developer.ubuntu.com. So developer.ubuntu.com is a website where you can go to, and it introduces you to everything you need to know about developing, packaging, publishing. So I usually divide up in my mind that there's basically 4 kinds of applications that you're going to want to publish. So an application could be gratis or it could be paid, and it can be Libre or it can be proprietary. And as a top-down hierarchical thinker, I immediately put that onto a quadrant. And you can see 3 of these quadrants you can actually fulfill on the current stable release just by going up to My Apps. So if you have anything, if you have a proprietary application that you want to give away, then you have to talk to our partner repository people at Canonical, because you have to convince them that it's worth it to our users for us to invest in your proprietary software. But if you want to sell your proprietary software, if you want to give away your open source software, or give away your or sell your proprietary software, or sell your open source software, you can just go up to My Apps, upload it. It's fun and easy, and next thing you know, you have users. Okay, so that brings me on to Ubuntu and Qt as open projects. So I think that as you migrate into this world of open governance, that there's going to be some subtle changes that you experience. And one is you're going to go from being users to being contributors. It's a very different place to be. It's also a lot more enjoyable community to participate in. And Ubuntu is also like that. So I think like Ubuntu and Qt are going to be kind of like gears that are going to fit together really easily and be able to drive each other in interesting ways. So pursuant to that, I thought I would talk a little bit about how we do open governance in Ubuntu, a little bit about how we build Ubuntu, and what lessons I would draw from that if I were in your situation. So for Ubuntu governance, the first thing that we have that probably a lot of people are aware of is we have a role called the self-appointed dictator for life, or the SABDFL. Very common to have a dictator for life in open source projects. This person's Mark Shuttleworth. He's the founder of the Ubuntu project and the founder of Canonical. So the dictator for life is like the final decision maker in all cases. So you can never have an infinite deadlock because he'll always be able to break that deadlock. He also makes sure that the project's always moving forward. He provides directional leadership. Then we have governance bodies. So there's a community council. The community council takes care of the code of conduct and oversees all the social structures. Community council is separate from the tech board. The tech board is a small group of stalwart contributors who oversee all technical decisions. There's a lot of other important governance bodies also, like there's membership boards, IRC councils, and things like this. I've talked about the code of conduct a lot, and that's like a very important part of what makes Ubuntu community what it is. We have a community team, so that means that there's a set of people who are responsible for the effectiveness of the community. And we have engineering teams. Engineering teams are built of people, typically the core is a group of Canonical people because they have the most time to work on it since they're paid full time to work on it, but it's a Canonical and community collaboration. The teams are important because Ubuntu has a value of what we call duocracy. Like the people who are doing the work really are the ones who get to make the decisions. So if you're the one fixing the bug, people can criticize you all they want, but you're the one who has the code. You kind of get to decide how that bug gets fixed. In the same way, if you're the desktop team, you're responsible for the way the desktop works. You're doing the work. You get to make those final decisions. If you want to know about the Ubuntu release cycle, I'm just going to touch on this real quick because you can just look up Google. There's so many visualizations and so much information about our release cycle. But I did want to call out what's happening next week, which is what we call the Ubuntu Developer Summit. It's called UDS more commonly. The reason I wanted to call this out is because it's very, very different than the experience that you're having here this week. So it's so UDS, the way it works, is every 6 months before a release, the community gets together and plans the next release. So it's a summit. It's very much a working experience. So the way it works is that somebody makes a blueprint, and a blueprint is a document that's available publicly on a web page, which is a statement of intent to do some work on the next release. People comment on it. If it seems to the engineering teams like it's something that's likely to happen, it'll get accepted to discuss at a session at UDS. So then attendees like you come not to be presented to you the blueprint, but to discuss the blueprint and to, in fact, try to influence the direction of the blueprint and to take decisions on what should be done on that blueprint and, in fact, potentially to take work items. So that's UDS, that's happening next week. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is because it's so transparent that these sessions the audio is streamed over the internet, so you can participate even if you're not in Florida next week. And there's a chat room that is projected on the wall. So if you're listening to the audio and you want to influence the session, you can just type into the IRC channel and participate remotely. So anyone can participate, anyone can contribute. So next week you already have an opportunity to influence how Qt and QML work in the next version of Ubuntu. All right, so top of the line, my top advice for you when you're getting ready for this open governance world. First, have a code of conduct and make it stick. Communities without a strong code of conduct make it hard for people to participate. The more different kinds of people can participate, you don't only want people to participate in Qt governance who have the guts to stand up to flame wars and name calling and bigotry, right? You want everyone to participate, and your code of conduct can ensure that everyone can participate. Have a benevolent dictator or similar role. You don't want to get mired in the past. You need somebody breaking deadlocks. You need somebody to help blaze a trail forward. Look at the duocracy rule. Like if you're doing the work, like you're really entitled to make the decisions. That makes you go a lot faster. And then finally, always default to transparency, especially for difficult decisions. So things, the more controversial a discussion or decision is, the more effort you need to put into transparency. And I think it's customary to end a talk on a call to action slide. So this is my call to action slide. First, like, get involved with Ubuntu, participate in how Qt and QML work in Ubuntu, and there's a web page there for how to become a Ubuntu contributor. And if you have apps, publish your apps. You can get your apps into the current stable release, or if you want other people to depend on your app or your app's already ready, you can get it into the development release and have it potentially default in one of the repositories the next time we ship. Okay, I think now it's time for questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have time for questions. We have room monitors with microphones. Is there anybody who would like to ask Rick something?
How interesting is your platform for commercial apps? So when I'm selling on the Nokia store, how interesting is it to sell a similar app on the Ubuntu store?
It's very interesting. So we have, the Software Center has the capability for users to pay for applications, and it's quite easy to submit your application. It takes by the time you submit it, it takes about 2 days to show up in the Software Center on the stable release. And we want your apps, so do it. That answer your question? Or?
Maybe a bit more detailed about sales numbers.
Oh, sales numbers. Okay. It's hard to estimate how many users we have. We think that we have about at least 20 million users. So I don't know about particular sales numbers. I would not quit my day job, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know how much money you could expect to make, or I think popular apps have probably sales in the hundreds right now, so it's not you're not going to have a crush of paperwork probably from processing the sales. To answer your question. Okay.
Any other questions?
That's
Are you
it?
all intimidated?
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Question? Oh.
I
Oh, there
couldn't
are.
see anything.
Oh, there. Go ahead if you have a mic. I can.
Okay. I think there's a fifth model for distributing apps which wasn't in your matrix, perhaps because you consider it in one of the 4 quadrants. That's paid content. How does Ubuntu look on that if you have free or proprietary apps that furthermore requires purchase of content?
How do we look upon it? I don't think we have. So I don't think Ubuntu has any, the Ubuntu community, I don't think has any special rules about that. And I don't think that the Canonical commercial team does. There are some so if you're selling content, I think that would be kind of an application by application discussion. There are some standards around affiliates. So if you are a default application on Ubuntu and you generate revenue from an affiliate code, then Canonical uses a portion of those proceeds to support the Ubuntu project. If you're not a default application and use an affiliate code would be users can buy things from Amazon through your store or something. If you're not a default application, Canonical also takes a percentage of that, but it's a lesser percentage than if you're a default application, presumably because you're using fewer Ubuntu resources. But if you're just selling your own content, I don't know of any specific rules. Okay. Were there other questions in the back? Or? Okay, there's somebody else waving.
There was a question up there, I think. Do we have a microphone?
It's not really a question, just sort of a call to action for you. Please stop breaking Qt Wacom tablet support with every release.
Okay, sounds like you'll have some interesting contributions to make at UDS next week then. Excellent. Okay. Is that anyone else? Sorry, it's a bit hard to see in the back, so
yeah.
You have to...
You have to wave your arms in desperation. No, I think that's it. Is it?
Okay.
Okay, I have one in the front. Maybe, yeah. There, the microphone is coming.
Yes, hello. As you said, Ubuntu is very popular. And the second thing is that good applications can bring more people to the operating system. Are you going to support development of the applications, or you are just counting on the community?
Will Canonical support development of the applications? Is that what you're asking? Like?
No, like more like sponsoring.
You mean as in like pay application developers?
Yes.
I don't know of any plans to pay third-party application developers a priori right now. The support that I do know is going on is around, if you look at developer.ubuntu.com, you'll see efforts to kickstart new application development there and to support users, users being developers in this case, and to create a marketplace for people who want to sell applications or otherwise make money from their applications. But I don't know of any kind of bounty system or anything that's under discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Then there was one question over there, I believe.
So I was just wondering what's the review process for applications submitted to the Ubuntu App Store. Do you just publish anything, or are there quality standards, or do you check for malicious code?
Okay, so he asked what's the review process for applications that are submitted to the store. So there's two review processes, depending on whether your app is free or paid. If it's a paid application, it will be reviewed by Canonical staff. If it's a proprietary application, of course, there won't be a code review, but there is a quality assurance process on both open source and proprietary applications that's to assure that the app behaves appropriately. If it turns out that there's a significant problem after it's published, it's not particularly difficult for us to respond to that. If it's an open source application, then and it's not paid, so which is a very common case, then if you're shooting for the stable release, so our current stable release is 11.10, that's what people are using. If you're trying to get it onto the stable release, then there's a review board, that's a community-driven review board called the Application Review Board, and they do a code audit, and they do some quality assurance to make sure that it works and make sure the packaging is good before they upload it. So nothing goes straight into the store without somebody at least doing some kind of quality assurance on it.
Okay, I can't see any more questions.
And it's okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.